see you.
Will be your host for the series.
Okay.
Get the name right.
Thanks a lot.
Well, it's 5 o'clock here.
Yeah. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's now 5:03, February 26th, and this is the Board of Directors Workshop. I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time, and then I'd like to adopt an agenda. However, I do have one amendment to the agenda, and that would be have public comment period prior to moving forward with the items.
I move the amended agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we are now at the public comment period. Anybody like to talk about any of the agenda items, please come to the podium and state the name and address. And seeing nobody, that ends public comment period. So the first thing we have is review the athletic field complex proposals, and I'll turn that over to Steve to start us off with it.
Can everyone hear me?
What?
Can we hear me?
Can you hear me now?
I will start us off just giving a little bit of history of how this agenda item has come about. In 2015, the CROA board appointed a facilities master plan task force to prioritize upcoming facility projects that would ultimately utilize the working capital or capital improvement funds that are collected from the resale of homes, the apartment recreation fees, and then any operating dollars from the offset of the payment for the 851 building that are redirected into that fund. In 2016, at the February 23rd CROA Board of Directors meeting, the board voted to approve Hanson, Walter & Associates to perform the civil engineering, design, permitting, and construction administration for the athletic field complex. And then they also voted for Bumpus & Associate to be the owner's representative in building design, bidding and contract administration, and the construction of athletic fields. In 2017, at the January 23rd Recreation Program Plan Task Force meeting, Hanson, Walter & Associates, and Bumpus & Associates reviewed the preliminary designs for the athletic field complex with the youth sports group stakeholders, and that was the youth soccer group, youth flag football group, youth lacrosse, and Little League baseball groups. And then in 2017, at the September 18th Board of Directors Workshop, the board gave direction to management and Hanson and Walter Associates to proceed with the design of the athletic field facility, having 2 natural turf fields and 1 synthetic turf field, with all 3 fields lighted with LED lighting. So that leads us to today, where over the past month, the bid RFP were put together by Bumpus & Associates, utilizing the engineering specifications by Hanson and Walter. And Danny will go a little bit more over the process and what those bids look like. So I will ask Danny to come up now and he can present those to you.
Okay, let me give you just a quick synopsis of where we were, what's happened since January 16th when we sent the package out for bid. We had plans and specifications from Mark and Hanson Walter, which included all the site work, which was the roadway extension, utility extensions past the golf course property, all the site work on the athletic field complex, including all the field dirt, the 2 natural turf fields, and the synthetic field. Musco lighting was there, paving, drainage. We did not include my building that I designed. Thank you very much. So because of the golf course property, I think you own it now or will own it soon, the building plan for there may or may not have a direct effect on the building that we were going to build on this field. It had bathrooms, concession stand, some meeting rooms, and some lockers. We felt it was best not to bid that building now and wait a little bit to find out what happens with the other property. So there's no restrooms on this facility right now. We also designed 2 shelters. They were 20 by 40 feet. They were in the bid package. They are they were included as alternates in the bid package, so they weren't included in the base bid. We sent the drawings out on the 16th. Pre-bid conference was January 30th. Originally bids were due the 14th, but I changed it to the 16th for a number of reasons. One of which we had a little more interest from contractors than I thought we would. Lately, when you bid something, I get on my hands and knees and beg contractors to bid, basically. But we'd sent out, during the process, We received questions from contractors. We need to do clarifications. Addendum 1 went out January 31st. I don't know why I can't read. That included, we had included in the original package for the contractor to do the synthetic turf field, which was about $550,000 worth of stuff. We decided to take that out of the general contractor scope, and the turf contractors bid directly to CROA. So that basically saved their profit and overhead, and it makes it a little bit cleaner to do the turf. It would still be done during construction, and we made it clear on what the general contractor was responsible for and what the turf companies were responsible for on that. We also clarified in Addendum 1, sent a specification out for Musco Lighting, which elaborated a little bit more on what the electrical drawing said, specified the netting between the fields. This stuff is expensive too. Yeah. All of these things just keep adding up. And we deleted the exercise stations, thinking again it's something easier for CROA just to do later at some time. And you have in the playgrounds, and he has bid, or you have bids on the playground and the exercise equipment. Addendum 2, we changed the sod from on the fields from Celebration Bermuda to Tiffway 419, which is a little easier to keep up. And we made an alternate for the lift station. There was a lift station required for the building that's not there. So I had several discussions with a couple of contractors, with Mark, on do we really want to put a lift station in and let it sit for some length of time, not quite sure how long, or is it better just to delete it and add it later? So we took an alternate to delete it. The prices vary. Arnco's, who was a little bidder, his price was $29,000 to delete the lift station at this point, but all the piping would still be sent there. Some of the reasoning was, again, not knowing exactly what's happening with the building, the future building. You could possibly do one large lift station if it works out better, or if not, if the Civic Center lift station belongs at the other end of the property, then you could do this exact same lift station when the building is built, depending on what building is built. Right. So, you know, all the confusion in the air there. So you have an option to delete the lift station as part of this contract. There was another alternate to delete the landscaping between this property and the golf course property. There's a buffer required by TCC in the county. It's 2 rows of shrubs and lots of stuff. I mean, I say lots. It's $6,000 worth of stuff that you may end up tearing up later when you connect the 2 properties. So when you own when it's the same owner, you're not really required to do that. We haven't sent that to anyone yet for approval. Again, it's kind of up in there, but you do have the possibility of deleting that as one of the alternates. So let's see. The other thing that happened Thursday or Friday, I was reviewing the bids again, and McCree's bid had a note that he had included an allowance for the grounding system for the LED lights. And I went, okay, that's fine. But it also appeared that he had bid metal halide lights instead of LED lights. No one else had an exception, so I had a meeting with Arnco that same day already scheduled and asked him, and what happened, and all the other contractors confirmed that, was that Musco sent their bid to the electrician with metal halide lights and said the owner really wants to have LED lights. Well, when you're bidding something, really wants to doesn't really count. So, I mean, it doesn't. So they bid they want to get the job, so they bid the lowest price, which was the metal halide lights. But I did receive revised bids from all of them today that includes the LED lights, and they're all in the $100,000 range. So it did add to the base bid, but more importantly, it has the LED lights in their bids now, and we're not having to deal with it later on the job. Or do you want to put the bids?
The cable didn't work.
Oh, the cable didn't work.
This is most recent.
Do y'all have the?
They have one copy of
This thing,
yeah.
Okay, so the low bidder,
This here is the most recent.
says revised, under base bid revised 22618? Is that what you have?
Yep.
Okay, so that the Arnco is the low bidder at the $2,752,950. I've met with him. He has everything in there. I went over, you know, just to make sure he had all the utilities, all the roadway, everything that was supposed to be included, and he's confident he does. The other guys are really about, what, $400,000 higher or so, or 300, depending on who you have. I mean, I've looked at all their bids. I've worked with Arnco before. He's building the church now, Presbyterian Church. He did the CDD building, and I've actually worked with him for 20 years on one thing or another. He does a lot of work for the county. So, I mean, my recommendation is, depending on your discussion, is to award a bid to Arnco, and we can discuss the alternates on whether you want to either add the shelters or delete the landscape or delete the lift station. So, I think
So
that's
Danny,
it.
since we're going to be owning the golf course property, we can basically delete all the landscaping issues right away, right?
I think so. That would, TCC would have to approve it, and the county would have to approve it, but you're really not required to buffer your own property, and it makes sense not to put a bunch of landscaping in there and then have to tear it out later.
Can I suggest maybe we talk about the contractors first, and then
Okay.
after that, talk about the alternatives? Does that make sense?
That's fine, go ahead,
Okay.
ask questions.
What the alternates
Mike?
are?
Well, I'd say after we deal with the contractors. questions. So I have a few questions on the contract. I don't know if anybody else does. But so one of my questions on contractors is I looked at these four folks, and none of them, Burke had a lot of experience doing recreation fields. I think they did the Osceola County fields, is that right? Where the spring training fields?
I think you're right. I think you're right.
But Arnco, I didn't see any experience doing recreation. Collage and McCree, pretty limited. Collage seemed to do a lot of churches, which probably don't include a lot of recreational fields. They probably do a few schools. So I guess my question is that a potential fact that they haven't done it before, or maybe you can correct me, just this is based on the information I saw on their website, would that, is that a problem? Would you see that as a potential problem, or is that something we shouldn't be worried about?
I would not see it as a problem. Most of the work is site-related, and the subcontractor he used, I'm trying to remember his name, it's escaping me now, but Camco, they did the CDD? Yeah, they did CDD. They're familiar with Celebration. I know we had a problem at the beginning at CDD about burning on site, because they had figured to burn on site, and you can't do that. So they're very familiar, and we made it clear in the drawings that you couldn't burn on site. But I don't think that's a big issue. It's mainly moving dirt around. The synthetic field is specialty, but they're not doing the synthetic field. That'd be from a different company.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I mean, they have to prepare it for the synthetic field, and it sounds like what you're talking about is that, so then they are not going to be the contract, so we're going to have two separate contractors, so potentially there could be an issue where, it's something happens wrong with a synthetic field, and, Arnco's looking at saying, well, I'm not responsible for that, and then the synthetic field company is saying, well, that was Arnco's fault. I mean, could we, that's probably the area I worry the most about. I mean, I think building a basic recreational field, but it seems like the synthetic field, this is getting pretty complicated.
Well, the synthetic field, what we clarified in addendum 1, the site contractor really just leaves the turf contractor a hole that's about 10 inches deep, and it's surrounded by the dirt surrounding it. The turf contractor then puts in the curb, and I'm going to read this if you don't mind, the curb around it, everything within the field, including the header curb, the geotextile fabric, the 1-inch by 12-inch perforated strip drains, which are completely covering the whole field, the perimeter 12-inch and 15-inch under drain, the stone base, and the synthetic turf rubber infill and surface. So all the general contractor would just bring the drains to the limits of the field, and then from there on, it's the turf contractor.
So you don't see anything that would overlap, be complicated? You wouldn't anticipate anything?
I don't think so, but that would be something we'd want to sit down right at the beginning of the job and make sure, even though I said all this, make sure everybody understands exactly what they're supposed to do, and the timing on when they're supposed to do it, and things like, should Arnco sod prior to all this happening? And the answer is no, I'm pretty sure. But we would have a lot of coordination meetings to make sure that everybody knows what they're doing and when they're supposed to do it, and try to identify any possible conflicts and try to get those resolved. This is a little cleaner than saying, we're going to let your electrician go in and do the electrical for the building, because that can get really, really messy. I think this is pretty clean, though.
Okay.
Nothing to overlap.
The percent, without having the contractor add his charge on, what would he add on to it if it was all under one?
I would guess 20%. I can find that out.
So, okay, no, that's, so you're talking, it'd cost us $100,000 more if it was one contract
Yeah.
instead of two.
Anybody else?
Danny, we got the actual complete specs and everything kind of late. It was noon today from when the original was sent out, so I'm trying to research in other places, but just for the preparation for the grass, even before we look at the artificial turf, there's finished grading, tile drainage, catch basins, everything. We haven't had a chance really to look at that. Is all that included in what?
It's in the engineering plan. Most of the stuff.
So all that is included what we were sent recently today?
It is. And I think the engineering plans were on the Dropbox were called site, and that included Mark's civil plans. It included landscape plans from Charlie Richardson and irrigation plans, and the electrical, site electrical plans also.
Okay, and were there any buildings in that, or are they
No.
coming later?
There are no buildings. The only building were the two shelters. They're there, but I can't remember what that file was called.
Are they shelters for storm or for?
No, or they're 20-foot by 40-foot pavilions,
Okay.
covered pavilions.
Pavilion moved 25 by 40.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll talk about
And then on the
that later.
bid base, I'm assuming that the $500,000 is an addition? We need to add that to the
For
bid
the turf?
base?
For the turf?
Yeah, it's on the
Yes,
back.
the turf is
For the
separate.
turf?
Yes. the
I know, I'm just- I'm
turf.
trying to
The
get
turf,
it.
the turf is separate.
Okay, so that's an addition. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So where the buildings are going to be.
Well, it's on the back page. We have to decide on which company we want to go with for the turf.
That's adding to that. Just want to make sure you knew that.
So Danny, with the different contractors, was there, oh, sorry.
Tim, yeah.
Oh, Tim,
I was
sorry.
just kind of
So the
waiting.
general contractor will plumb.
Yes.
For the potential of the building.
They will
whatever
rough
that
in
might be.
the water and
So
sewer.
there'll be sewage and
Yes,
water.
and some
all that.
conduits, electrical conduits. So and then they'll put sod on the pad, future pad. Right.
What do you think?
I have several questions, some of which follow on with some of this. One is, Paul said he found something about prior experience. I found nothing about prior experience that separates one company from the next. I'm also interested in their prior history with job completion on time and on budget.
Okay.
So has there been some review and public disclosure of the four bidders and their prior experience? I mean, I did not see that.
There's nothing official, or I did not review their prior experience or ask them the questions.
Comparable experience in this sort of work.
I did not do that, although, I mean, at firsthand, again, I'm familiar with Arnco. McCree did the dog park, so I'm familiar with them. Burke, I just met, and when they're from Miami. When they first asked to bid, I said, you're probably wasting your time. But then they said, could we come meet you? And I went, okay. And so they did, and they have offices all over Florida, are building all over the Southeast, do a lot of sports complexes, so I felt we should at least get their bid. I thought they were qualified enough. I did not want them to waste their time and say, I'm sorry, you're from Miami. We're not going to accept your bid, but I thought they were qualified. Collage, I think I've done a project with them many years ago, so I'm not that familiar with them, but again, they were very attentive also. But I did not do any research on.
So, I mean, the bottom line is, it seems to me it comes, while we're looking at his cost right now, and it seems to me there's some other factors, so that extra dollars spent may help offset problems later, whether it's cost or timeliness. That's just a comment.
I think the bigger question is what you're asking, is if there's ever been any complaints about completion issues and on-time issues.
On time and on
With
budget.
any of these companies that you're aware of.
I'm really only aware of Arnco's history with the jobs he's done for me, and there's not been any problems like that. McCree worked on the dog park. I had not worked with them before, and had they been low bidder, I would say, that's fine, let's use them too, but I would sit down with them and make sure that they have everything in there and be a little more conscious.
So actually, the bigger question for me, which I raised when first getting on the board like 11 months ago, was what is the actual final cost of the entire project? What I'm concerned about is anything escalating. So we get a bid for 2.7, but it ends up that we pay that company 3.1 because of stuff that happens in the meantime. So I'm still interested. I know that I did a projection and shared it with the board last April or May, April 27th. But, you know, what is included and what is not included from what we had estimated before. I know that there was comment in your presentation that the building design was not included. I'm wondering when and why that happened, because I think we're a long ways from a community center. And so why not move forward? And I know we had previously had $500,000 in our draft budget for that facility. And at that point, the total cost was $3.1 million, including that $500,000. So what I'm interested in is, are all of the elements that we had identified before, roads preparation, road and sidewalk, water and reuse, electricity, drainage, sanitary, preliminary drawings, walkway and trail for the fields, synthetic turf, LED lighting, and concession stand, which we had estimated at $3.1 million, are all of those included today?
No. I think the only one, we can go over it again, but the building is not included. I think everything else you mentioned is included.
Everything else is included?
I don't think the trail.
The walkway and trail to the fields? Not to North Village. Not Canal and not Canal.
No, but to the fields.
Not Canal and not Canal East.
It goes all the way to the end of the property.
Actually, the walkway and trail changed from just a regular size. Go ahead and explain what the width of the fire.
The increase in the cost.
Was it 12 feet? 10 foot. The walkway increased, the width of the walkway increased to 10 feet because of fire truck.
But that is included in this bid?
That is included in that bid, yes, sir.
So it has gone up quite a bit since our preliminary estimate.
And I'm just interested in what the price is going to be at the end of the day, because that's the cost to our residents.
Because the concession stand was, what, 500?
The ballpark without,
So
I don't even know if we have drawings.
I guess our estimate, apples to apples before, was about 2.6, so now we're up to 3 point.
3 point something.
But did the 2.6 include the turf, the synthetic turf?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, one
Yes.
synthetic.
We had 606 for synthetic turf.
Yeah.
Dave, can I interject one thing? on this?
Sure.
And I'm looking at the timeline for the civic corridor for the 2016-17 projects. Obviously, we're in 2018 now, but the site work for the fields was at $1 million, and for the road was at $62,000. For the parking lot was at $130,000, and for the concession, which included restroom and storage, was $190,000. So again, we're already significantly above that, and we at one time talked about 3 AstroTurf fields, 3 synthetic turfs, and that would put us over 5 or $5.5 million. So I think, again, I am not at all opposed to the fields. I want to make that very clear. They're part of the plan, and we want to support that. I think we're just trying to figure out, or I'm trying to figure out at least how to be most physically responsible when we build these. And I think we need some type of a restroom facility for spectators that we had originally talked about at this point.
This is not a part of it. This is not a part of it. This is the infrastructure only. This has nothing to do with the building. Has nothing to do with anything. That comes later.
Well, we had talked about it.
And we realize it'll cost more, but
Yeah, but I mean,
it's going to cost more.
if we're already over by, and they're rounding another $500,000, I'm just saying, do we look at the building with it now? I mean, before we were talking about $5 million, so.
When we talk about concession stand and restrooms and storage, all in one.
All in one.
I don't know,
We had
Joel,
talked-
I don't know if we're in that position to start making those decisions on the buildings, because you're going to have to look at architectural designs and everything, and you're going to TCC approvals.
But isn't that what you designed already?
The building is designed, and it went to TCC.
For concession and restrooms and storage.
They pulled it out.
Concessions, restroom, and storage.
And a meeting room, and a meeting room also.
Right,
In
right.
that same building?
Yeah.
It's in one building.
Right.
Yes.
And our ballpark from way back from 11 months ago was about $500,000.
And
That's a non-bid ballpark.
That's probably still good. The building grew over the last couple of years or so. Originally, it was just, a very small concession stand, 2 small restrooms, and it kind of creeped. But it's all necessary stuff.
So if we use Armco's bid, that's 3.25.
So helping me understand the big picture, why and when was that removed? Because I think, I don't know if we've had any board discussion about that.
I was lost on that.
I don't remember any board discussion
I
about that.
can address that. In the December board management report, I talked about with the possibility of a building coming, and it's documented in your management report on the December. I have a copy of it if you'd like one, but we talked about with the possibility of a community center building coming on. It just made sense to hold on the building on site for the athletic fields, because there's some things that would be shared. Like, you don't need as much meeting space at the concession building if you're going to have multiple meeting space in the Civic Corridor building. So your footprint's exactly the same on the specs that they have here. It's just a matter of whether you want to build the building now or you want to wait and talk with the new board on what's going to happen with the Civic Corridor, with the newly acquired property, and what that building's going to look like. Is that building going to be close to the athletic fields? Is it going to be on the other side? I think there was just a lot of questions. So the school of thought was, instead of holding on the athletic fields, which has been a project that we've been working on since 2015, it was move forward with the RFP for the athletic fields and hold off into phase 2 for the buildings.
But what we don't know, now that we've acquired the property and talking about the community center, we do not know what that facility would look like, and whether that would be the community center, or whether this building would be the community center, or whether Stetson would be the community center.
And it sounds like that's going to be...
We don't know that.
Right, we don't. And that was a key point of discussion at the forums, and it sounds like that is going to be one of the items that the first board, or that the new board in a week will be tackling and discussing. And then I think we can go from there. If the board wants to wait for a few years, and the community wants to wait for a few years to build the building out of capital dollars, then we're going to have to look at a solution for restrooms on site and possible storage on site.
Okay, so this decision was made about the fields, assuming the building for the community center was going to go at the location of the Civic Corridor, and that's why the restrooms were left out. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I don't know that you all ever voted on it. It was just a discussion to continue
we
forward with the RFP.
We didn't really discuss it.
I think it makes sense to hold off. I mean, as long as it's not going to cost the extra money. I mean, the one issue we got is restrooms, and we can have, I mean, they're nice temporary restrooms that you can have out there, right?
Right.
I mean, we're not talking portables.
We'll plumb them in, it's just that you're not building the building.
Right, and there are a lot of options for restrooms that we can explore. If we want to build a permanent building, we'll have that option. If we want to look at some really nice temporary restrooms, we can look at that also.
Yeah.
I think the thing to me is that we're all kind of, I came in here smiling because I'm out of here in a couple of weeks. And quite honestly, there's going to be a new set of people that are sitting amongst the group here. I think to me, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, these fields, if we vote on them at the next meeting, are not going to be in place and installed by the time the new board takes over in March, right? Okay, so I think there's a part of me that goes, if we move the fields down the road, because this is something we've been working on forever, for this, we removed the structure out of it because we just don't know what's going on, and candidly, that's not necessarily a decision this board's even going to vote on at that point. But I think that even if we were to come in and say there isn't going to be any sort of a structure there, and okay, we need a place that we can go to the bathroom, we can then explore that. No matter what we're going to do, it's going to cost money at the end of the day, whether it's a small bathroom, a big bathroom with a closet and meeting room and everything like that, whatever we want to do. But that's necessarily a decision that I don't think is going to really impact a lot of this site work, because if we move some of the plumbing around because of that, we're still going to have the plumbing in the same spot for like the lift station and all this kind of stuff, because that's where the stuff's going to go, right?
Well, I asked that question.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the same logic applies to the lift station. Do you build a smaller lift station now, knowing that possibly you have another building, and then you have to double the size of it, you have to move it? There's just too many unknowns.
That's too expensive. That's really expensive.
Right.
So, to me, I guess we're talking a difference between the max bidder and the low bidder when we're talking about site work only, which is, Danny, as you mentioned, is moving dirt around, which a lot of these guys are experts in moving dirt around. We're talking about, $400,000 in between the difference of them. That's nothing to sneeze at, but at the same point in time, the difference between like Arnco and McCree is pretty close. So I guess my question is what, why do you feel that Arnco did come in at the low price? Is it just because they kind of knew what they were getting into? I mean, I see their sign up a lot around here, so clearly they're doing a lot of work in the area. But what would you think is the reasoning for that they were able to come in as the most, cost effective?
They probably have some lower price subs and probably lower profit and overhead. And I think they're comfortable working in Celebration. I think they know how things need to be done out here. I know when I talked to Burke, I said, you guys just need to be aware it's different here. And not to scare you, but it's different.
Sure.
And,
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
We looked at McCree doing the dog park about 2 years ago, and they gave us a wildly out of ballpark number, like $900,000 to do it. And you came up and said, we need to do
Civil engineering study.
something differently. We did something differently. I know to what you're asking, how often they come in on time, whether there's stuff and stuff like that. I don't know if we have to investigate all 4 of these companies to do that, because there's $300,000 difference between Arnco and McCree, the next closest bidder. Arnco is in the community. They've done work at the Presbyterian Church. They've done it at CDD. They've also built the road so far out in the Civic Corridor. So they are familiar, and they've done work for us already. And I don't know if anybody's complained about their
You
work.
mentioned the CDD building. Did that come in on time, on budget? Were there any issues there?
There were minor issues. I mean, there's always going to be construction issues, and quite honestly, most change orders on the jobs that I do are owner started. I mean, it's just things that you either want. But Arnco did fine at CDD. We got it FGBC approved. We got a certificate for Florida Green Building Council.
I've driven on the road.
The church, I do notice the church that they have a supervisor on site virtually all the time. So he's keeping a real eye on the subs, which I think is a big,
absolutely.
there.
And I'm sure they'll have a full-time, they had a trailer at, at CDD. I'm sure they'll have one here also, and they generally have a full.
That's specified in the contract.
I was going to say you specified a trailer there.
Yeah, but I think you'd probably do that anyway, if it wasn't.
So, yeah, they'll do, anyway, they'll have a superintendent that's full-time, absolutely.
And so, Dave, the other thing, I mean, I guess really and truly, we're talking about between Arnco and McCree here. So if we want to look at history, those would be the 2 that I would be concerned with. But I think the thing that stands out to me is, I know you wanted to talk about the contractors, but this kind of gets into some of the options, which I just want to talk about. Their options for McCree's are all less expensive versus where Arnco's, all of them with the exception of the lift station, which there's a significant difference in between the 2 of them, they're more expensive. So is McCree doing more work on the front end for some of these things, or do you think that it was just one of them sharpened their pencil more than the other?
That's a tough question. And alternates, over the years, I've changed my mind several times on alternates. I did the shelters as additive alternates because if I'd have done them as deductive alternates, I don't think we would have got as much money back. And so I wanted a clear number on that. The other 2 I added later. Had I put some thought in the lift station, I could have done that as an additive alternate, but we didn't think about it until we get a little further down the line. But trying to figure out how contractors bid something is, I'm not sure. Even with a
black art,
it's a black art.
Okay.
To me, the biggest surprise to me was the difference in the prices of the lift stations.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't have a good explanation on why McCree was $60,000. And everybody, we had 15 cents.
Yeah, where did you come up with that?
I don't have an answer for that either. But, I mean, it's not surprising to get bids that have a wide range. This one, I mean, literally 3 of them are really close. Arnco's lower. I'm sure he's going to kick himself and say, dang, I left $300,000 on the table. But when you're filling out the paperwork and you really want the job, you have to go with your best gut. So.
And Eric's right, there's not a huge price difference on this, and that's really not my concern, but my concern, I tend to look at overall too much. And Mark, I know you're not on mic, but when you did the civil engineering study for the dog park, did you continue down the corridor? Have we done any soil testing? Do we know if there's any issues with that area where we're looking at putting the 3 ball fields and spending $3+ million?
There has been soil work done.
Okay, good, okay.
To be side, that is part of the process for the soil sample.
But yeah, but we didn't do that for that part.
So with
We
the
did.
budget, I mean, with the review, did you get a detailed budget or just the figures?
I just got the figures. What, I normally don't ask for a detailed budget, which is also called a schedule of values, because by bid date, they don't have time to fill all that out. Arnco has one. I've asked him. He showed it to me, but he wouldn't give it to me. He probably would if you wanted to see that.
I would like that.
I could see that, get that tomorrow.
Not to compare the two, though, right? Not to compare McCree's versus Arto, because I think that will definitely.
To me, to make sure it's,
I think you need an
You will
engineering,
definitely
just
start
that
asking
it
multiple-
looks,
you need an engineering degree to do that, I think.
if someone's bidding a low figure on,
That'd be good.
We're smart enough to figure out those two things.
yeah, it's not a matter of comparing, but it's to make sure that it's,
To make sure it's
Accurately
reasonable,
done.
But
aligned, and have
David,
some engineers look at it.
Danny's already went through with each one of these companies, initially what they were supposed to bid.
Yeah.
Then after he got the bids in, he went back through his second, is that correct, or am I misspeaking?
But I reviewed their bids.
You reviewed
and asked
the
several
bids,
questions.
and
asked
then you
questions.
called them and asked questions about things on the
Yes,
bids.
I did.
To make sure that,
That's why he's standing here.
to make sure that there was apples to apples to apples across the
He's
board.
the owner's representative.
I hate to muddy the discussion a little bit, but there are some things that here that are additives that we may not need right now. So to actually lower the cost a little bit. For example, the alternate number 3 shelter is actually located in the middle half, or the middle section, or being the middle of the synthetic turf field, right? And the shelter number 4 is actually on the far end.
Right.
And I don't think we really need that shelter on the far end at this point in time, so I would be willing to X that out,
Well,
as well as the,
Those are additive, though.
Those are additive
Right now,
right now.
oh, so it's not one part of this
They're
bid.
added like the turf. So
Except-
we take the base, we would add those, and
So we're
the
just adding the
turf.
one, I'm just saying add the one pavilion, not
well,
two
you could.
pavilions.
I mean, if you want to, I mean, that's part of the discussion. You could add one or both.
The second pavilion initially was put down there because there's a place for a playground past the end of the synthetic turf field. But that's not in the mix right now.
The playground went out with the concession stand and the.
Well, I have some bids and proposals I can show you for playgrounds if you want to address that now, but I figured let's talk about the fields first
I
and see if we
think
can get to
fields
that
and
first.
concession stands will come before playground.
I mean,
Yes, thank you.
so I did math, which is hard for me. And so, I mean, really, my previous concern with, there's only about 20 grand worth of difference between the additives between Arnco and McCree. So we're not talking about a huge, maybe 30 grand. So there's not a huge difference there either. So, I mean, to me, they're all within the same ballpark, pun intended. But the only thing with the lift station, I mean, that's the wild card here. But I think that, you know, that's a discussion, once again, that we're not even necessarily going to be able to answer when we first enter this agreement. So my question then, Danny, is, you know, if we don't know about things like the lift station, can we still move forward with the rest of the project contingent on, you know, we're not doing it right now, but we understand that if we need to add it in later, we can give you more money? I mean, is that, how would that work?
What I could ask him to do would be to hold these, let's see, award the contract, hold these prices for the alternate 3, 4, 5 in time period, and he would probably say yes.
Gotcha.
Danny, can you define the lift station's purpose for everybody and the difference?
It pumps
can.
poop, right?
How they do not?
Yeah. It pumps poop.
Well, that's the-
Because we're all flat.
Okay, so water runs downhill, all right, but there's times when.
I've heard that
the
phrase
water-
differently, Dan.
I have to. There's times that you can't make it run downhill, so to make it run uphill, you have to pump it. So all it is a pump station, so from the concession stand, the water goes to this lift station, and then it gets pumped to the sewer. I'm not sure how far away, is it right at the road or further down?
All the way down the access road, all the way down to the.
That's a good
To the
ways.
CD. Okay. So anyway, so it's a way to pump the water uphill, is what it's for. And it's pretty necessary at this point.
Yeah. Listen, we don't want to leave it out.
Cream must have
Just
been
to
thinking it was
clarify,
more.
on the bid, you have the base bid for Arnco, $2.75 million.
Yes.
If you do not use Alt 5 and Alt 6, that comes off of that base bid. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if you're not doing those two, which it sounds like it doesn't make a lot of sense to do them right now, that's
Oh,
a
I see what you're
reduction
saying.
of those two numbers. Now, if you wanted to add the pavilions, that would be an addition then to those numbers.
Yeah.
Steve, do you have a feeling that in terms of pavilions?
The shelters are
as
as,
whether or not,
the lands,
I know Jack recommended just doing one of the pavilions. Is that, are you fine with that, or what's your recommendation?
Yeah, the question from Paul was about the pavilions, and I think that the one pavilion was recommended by the different stakeholders because they wanted a place to go when lightning storms come. They need to take shelter, and shelter is either going to be their car or that pavilion. There's not a lot of other shelter out there. It's just all open space.
So you're okay with doing one? Yeah, we need to do one, but you were okay not doing the second one?
Yeah, and I think the second one, it makes sense to not do it now if you're not doing the playgrounds.
If you're not doing the
But if you
playground,
put the
okay.
playgrounds and the exercise stations, it's nice to have the additional shelter down there, but if you're not going to do them.
Where would those be? Or,
So the three fields it runs
Right.
1, 2, and then 3. The playground and the shelters were all
Yeah.
down here at the end of field 3.
okay. Oh, so both shelters would be on the far right?
The other one was on top of field 3.
Yeah.
One was right there,
Oh.
and the other one was right there.
So they're both adjacent to the
Yeah.
artificial
That
turf
last-
field?
And that's the one I say we don't need.
And that's your premier
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
You're going to get your most use
Yeah,
on that field.
got it.
A little bit redundant.
That field's going to be available 10 minutes after a heavy downpour. It's just going to, you're going to get a ton of play. You can put, we've had some back and forth. I've heard about Spring Park Field not looking great because of youth lacrosse beating it up. That's not going to happen on a synthetic turf field. You can put whatever you want on there. As long as you brush it, it's going to look like it did when you bought it.
We'll never have to mow it.
You don't have to mow, you don't have to water it.
Well, that fertilize,
So I saw some references in here to the markings there being soccer, and some language about being soccer fields, and we've talked about these not being soccer fields. These would be athletic fields with markings for different sports.
Right. And I can explain the linings on there. The reason why we talked about doing the initial lining as soccer is because that's the largest number of participants that we have in our youth sports programs. I think it's over 600. The next is probably in the 150, 200 range. So that's why it would be initially lined with the soccer. I would recommend at the least, and trying to find it, the ticks for the lacrosse field, so that you can line the synthetic turf field too. There's paint for that. I would recommend at the very minimum the ticks, which was $1,000. But I think to put boys lacrosse and girls lacrosse is $14,000 for each. I think I have to go back through here and find that. But if you wanted to line it with all three of those fields, then you would add an additional $28,000.
The high school,
would think it would confuse.
may I say something real quick? The high school, if you've been down to it before, has lined, I believe, for 5 or 6 different sports.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of different sports. And part of it's, they use some kind of a paint also that
They
they've
do.
painted on after the initial installation.
There's-
And the paint lasts only a certain amount of time, is that
There's
correct?
2 different types of paint. You
Go
can
ahead,
do a more
explain.
permanent paint that lasts for almost a year, or you could do more temporary paint that you have to line it more regularly. You're going to probably have lacrosse and soccer both doing cross fields. Youth Flag Football does it. They do smaller fields to maximize the number of fields they can put on those fields. So just a plain field is going to look strange. So for aesthetics, you want some sort of lines on there, and then I think the logistics of the tips, or if you choose to spend the additional dollars to have it lined for all 3, you just start running into complications when you line it for every possible scenario, because then you don't know what line you're playing with anymore.
I would
It's
think
just
it
too
would
much.
confuse the children.
No, let me go on this one here, because we were in Apopka on Saturday. They got a huge, beautiful sports complex. I mean, just amazingly large. And the fields, they had lined with white for soccer, for blue for lacrosse, black for something else, so the kids didn't have a problem playing on it.
Yeah, personally, I wouldn't want to shortchange lacrosse. That's a huge growing sport.
It is growing rapidly.
And I misrepresented that number. It's $7,500 for each for boys, and then $7,500 for boys, $7,500 for girls. So $15,000 for both.
I'd want to add that.
That'd be worth it, yeah.
But I think, so these are, understanding that all of this obviously contributes to the overall cost of the project, these are all things that whether we decide on what we're going to line it now versus in a month isn't necessarily going to the price is the price. It's going to cost us that to line it.
In fact, you're far enough out now that the artificial turf is going to be literally 6 months, 8 months away. You don't make that decision until then.
I think what we saw was,
Here even.
Armco said 180 days, so it looks like it's about 6 months turnaround. If they were to break ground in April, you're looking at having the fields open.
So,
Andy, what's
so
your-
are you saying you want to punt that decision to,
I mean-
to the board? I'm afraid that it's going to get lost and all of a sudden the
That's
text is going to
true.
go in.
That's
and,
true.
I think we should go ahead, and vote on that because we're basically doing the fields.
All right, well, can we write down what?
I don't trust these new candidates.
Paul, can we start writing down the additives that we're interested in doing then, so we know what we're going to be voting on?
Well,
You know,
Yeah.
you want to include this?
Yeah, I think we've already decided, we did one shelter, we're eliminating the landscaping and lift station. For the artificial turf, we're adding for both boys and girls lacrosse, right?
And soccer, no?
Oh, yeah, soccer's already included in it.
Oh, is it okay?
So that's plus 15K is the lacrosse.
And can I ask one more thing also, the logo in the center of the field, you can either do a big white circle, and I know this is going to sound like a lot, but remember, it's a celebration-worthy complex. We asked them what it would cost to do the celebration logo, not the girl on the bike, because that's a lot of
it's a lot of paint.
but the celebration established 1994 around the outside, and that cost is $14,000 to do.
Oh, that's nothing.
I think that'd be cool.
But it would look pretty neat there, especially if
Hey, Eric, write a check.
Let me see here. I got a couple on me here now.
I figured I'd ask while you're in the generous giving.
I'd give you $100 for spray paint.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I know. No, but I mean, really and truly, I think, I joke, but, we're talking about 14 grand when we're talking about close to a $3-point-something million project. So I would really hate to skimp out on something like that, when.
You want to look, here's the pamphlet, it has
So-
the storm field.
Yeah, no, it looked
high
cool.
school, and it has their logo.
Because those were in the big packet thing.
People see it from 417, so.
I think that's
What's that cool town?
So I think the only question that I have, and that I got really concerned when I saw the word porta potty in anywhere, because we already have that problem with, not talking about construction porta potty, I'm talking about if we don't do a bathroom, we're going to need something down there while we figure out the building piece. And I know, Steve, you talked about doing some sort of like a nicer temporary thing. Would that be something that it would be like a nice still one that would be contained in a tank, or are we still, or is there a mini lift station? I don't know. Is there something that we could still plumb down there that we wouldn't have to necessarily, we could make a decision later or something like that? Because my fear is that I don't want to do this, and then we get into the position that we have, a little comfort house sitting down there for, 4 years or something like that. So my question is that when we talk about doing something nice, are we talking about doing something that is self-contained, or is there a way that we can still plumb it?
We could plumb it if we install the lift station.
So that's even if it's something small, we still got to have it because it's got to be pumped somewhere.
Still have to have the lift
Yeah,
station.
okay.
So I know we were talking about taking these alternates. I did write down, though, if we go with Armco, to ask him and get an answer by Wednesday, if it will hold his prices on, especially on the lift station.
Yep.
For 120 days or something like
Sure.
that.
Now, when we originally looked at the concession and restrooms and storage, because I don't know where we're going to do for storage now, it was 190,000. So I assume that's probably 400. Or did anyone look at that, adding this on when you talked to the contractors?
Before Danny answers, can I just add, I think the numbers that Debbie's referring to, just for the rest of the board, those are.
Yeah, they're old numbers.
Those
Those
are
are
from
probably old.
2015's facility master plan. And the page, or 2 or 3 pages before those numbers, I preface it by saying, these numbers are my complete best guesstimate based on.
Steve doesn't know what he's doing.
Right, that's
so-
That's why I doubled it. It said 190, that's why I doubled it.
I talked to
Yeah.
some of the other directors that had just recently built, but they're 2015 numbers, and they were best guess numbers. And then it does grow as you get out and you start looking at some of the complications on the site, the road complications, the mandatory sidewalk that a fire truck could go on, those types of things just start bringing the numbers.
Oh, yeah, and that's why, again, I know this was an old estimate at 190,000, that's why I doubled it right away, because almost everything on these projections has doubled, and that's understandable, things change, and our requirements are much higher. But I still think we're going on the assumption that this building is coming and it's going to be where it is, And I just think we're not even deciding that till after we discuss this. So I just think looking at the plan down the road, are we looking at a 5-year plan? Where is the building going to go? How does it affect this? I still think we need, if we're spending this much money, why cut out the concession restroom storage? Where are they going to store the equipment, for example? I mean, do you know do they have a plan for storage?
Danny designed a beautiful building that had plenty of meeting space, plenty of storage space.
They're taking it where?
On the footprint of this athletic field complex. I mean, the CROA board paid him to design a building, so he has that design ready to go. But the question is do you build that big of a building if you're going to turn around and build a community center? Do you need the additional meeting space? Do you need the storage space?
Well, that's why it needs to be the same discussion.
If you could start saving some of those dollars now to utilize later for your larger building, does that make sense? And I think those are the questions that have been asked. So I'm going to push the new board in strategic planning to focus on how we approach the community center, if there is going to be a community center there, and if there's not, what are the decisions that we can then make to add what is needed on this facility, the restroom, storage, concession, those types of things.
I mean, I think it definitely is part of the discussion.
Yep.
Obviously.
I mean, I think though, to me, I would rather us start moving dirt around, because we need, this project is something that we've been working on for a while, and I think that if we were to turn around no matter what, I think the new board would realize that if we do something and they don't put a civic center down there, that we're going to need somewhere to go to the bathroom. So that they would hopefully figure out that I don't think we're going to be left with nothing. So I think that in that way, but we just need to go into that, whatever we decide on, understanding that whatever that is, it's going to be an expense. Either it's going to be a big expense because we're going to do some other building, or we're going to do something smaller, or we're going to do the original one that Danny designed, or what. I think we all know that it's going to be more. We just don't know how much more yet.
Right. And that's what I was trying to find out, Danny. When you designed that, what was it roughly? Because we can always take out the meeting space, but what was that building roughly?
The size of it?
The cost?
Oh, the cost? What was my estimate?
I think we said 500.
Michael, how did you?
500,000. I know the things that grew were the storage spaces, the meeting room. The bathrooms always pretty much stayed the same. Concession stand pretty much stayed the same. So if you're, I guess I should tell you my opinion right now. If we're going to put a building there, we may not need the meeting rooms. I think we're still going to need the storage though, because it probably needs to be right there.
Right.
But you could make a case that a meeting room there is good. That way umpires and such can meet right there instead of going to a building that may be further down the road. And to interject something else, we need parking too. So at the time we start talking about the building, whatever it may be, you may also want to talk about adding some parking to the golf course side, because there's not going to be enough
Right, because this includes no parking.
Or it does include parking. There's 50 spaces. Or 50.
And there's an additional 80-something along the road that are part of the. And then I think if we have a cleared out lot, there's additional parking there. But I think I agree with Danny. I think that they're all needed eventually there, but you got to start looking at your dollars too. And right now you're at about 2.5, and you just bought the golf course property, so you got to take that off of there. I think we're looking at
What's it?
what the total amount, if you look
the
at
reserves.
your capital improvement fund was at 2.597. That was before the purchase of the golf course. So the golf course was 606,428.
So that's with that already paid for.
Yeah. So no, that would leave you then with 1.9. If you estimate about $900,000 for this year, plus if you look at utilizing your surplus that you have that was moved over, operating surplus, that would give you about 4.1 at the end of 2018. And we're talking about a $3.3 million project right now.
So that'll drain the coffers.
Well, we'll be down about 800,000, another 200,000 over. But we have the money to pay for it, though.
To cover this project, correct?
Yeah.
If all goes well.
I mean,
To cover this project without a concession stand.
Right. Well, Danny,
Without a building.
Well, you could probably add it. You still have the money. You're just utilizing more of your
3.316 is what we
surplus.
had.
I think.
No concession stand.
Danny, the concession stand you're building, wasn't that a two-story building?
No.
No, it's not.
No, but
How much was it? I didn't get the price.
500.
500.
Yeah, 500,000.
But it grew over time when people said, oh, we'd like this, and the the building actually got stretched out. I forgot how many square foot it was.
It's with the covered areas, it's approaching 3,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's a
Okay. It was about 150 square foot, more or less.
Something like, yes.
And
for some of us, it's 2 houses.
If you do that.
restrooms are going to have to be dealt with. I think it's the new board's decision in the first 6 months. They're going to have a direction they've decided to go on, whether it's the, whether it's the trees on the golf course property, there's a lot of those, or leaving up porta potties for a year, or doing something a little bit more permanent. Danny's already said, from what I heard, that he's going to ask Arnco to hold the lift station in abeyance, and maybe get about a 6-month abeyance on that, if he could. If we go with Arnco, we haven't decided that yet.
Right.
But if you have an abeyance on that amount, then the new board has enough time to come in and say, you know what, we're going to need the lift station, go ahead and add it back in. We're going to build a small restroom complex here, or whatever happens at that point.
Hey, Danny, what's the time frame from start to finish on this project? Is it a year? I mean, to put all
180
the
days.
infrastructure in?
From notice to proceed, it's 180 days.
Danny, does that include the artificial turf?
It does.
Oh, really?
Wow.
So that is a short-term period, then. I figured it was much longer than that, because you'll be putting roads in and things like that.
You're going to probably need to give it another month after completion to let the sod, the Bermuda turf take. It needs a good, strong root base.
Is that, I assume the Celebration Company, they wouldn't have a problem if we had like a portable building like the Catholic Church has got up there for some period of time? Is that right?
I would not want to speak for the Celebration Company.
We got our first round of, are you talking about for the construction or for?
Well, no, for like the bathrooms and the meeting space.
Can we ask that question before we vote?
Alternatives for things that you can put up there for.
For a temporary thing?
Temporary, yeah. I can't imagine it, but we might want to ask them about that. I mean, that may be a solution, is to just get it.
They would not approve it permanently, but they would.
Looks nice.
We can certainly talk to the residents.
Permanent? Semi-permanent. Looks pretty permanent.
Okay.
All right.
We don't speak it with fork at the tongue.
All right.
They didn't let the Presbyterians do that, let me tell you.
For a year.
All right, guys, so where are we on this? Have we beat this to death, or you want to keep going? What are we doing?
No, I think it makes sense. I think so, just so that we're clear, Steve, can you read back what our direction that we gave to you on different things that we need from you or Danny?
Absolutely. The only thing we didn't talk about was a little bit more detail on the synthetic turf, and it's kind of weird the way that was done, but Mark and I went out and looked at a couple different products. I've been researching synthetic turf for over 4 years now with Seminole County for their baseball complex that has 9 turf baseball fields, and then through FRPA and looking at other facilities that have them. We've been to the high school, we've looked at their turf, and what we found is that this field turf product, and really it's hard to bid apples to apples on synthetic turf, because they all try and come up with something that makes them unique from each other, how they weave it together.
Marketing.
They try and come up with how they tie the actual panels together, but what they're really doing to set them apart is looking for something to cool the turf down. And the field turf product that we found seems like is the top of what's out there on the market right now. It's about 30 degrees, I believe they said, cooler than a rubber cum field would be. And we were out at the school on an August day at noon, and with the sun out directly on the field, I was able to put my hand on the field and not get burnt. But when the sun went behind the shade, it immediately cooled down drastically to where you could feel the coolness of the field, and that's all the infill that they put in there. So the fibers are one thing, which looks like the grass, but the grass doesn't look like grass until they put the infill in. And then the infill actually acts as your safety deterrent. It's what passes your Hick test, because if someone falls, they're falling on that surface, which includes this cooling mechanism that they put in there. That's their safety on top of that. So the way that they bid it out, though, Field Turf bid on it with NIDE doing the install, and NIDE bid on it with them purchasing the turf and doing everything. So or 90 actually comes in $1,000 less by
Yeah.
doing it. And you can see they do this a lot back and forth. Either Field Turf will take the lead or 90 will take the lead. But for the $1,000, 90 did the high school field, and it doesn't seem like there's any complications with that. Other than maybe
How long has
some.
that been down, do we know?
They opened it last August, last
fall.
July, I believe it was. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It's been open longer than that because my
It's
son
been over a year.
played football on it last
They've done
February.
this season. Yeah.
So a year or two or something?
Over a year, but not 2, yeah. Do we know the maintenance on that field for the turf?
You have to, they provide, as part of the equipment, they provide like something that you pull behind a utility vehicle and nav, but it really is just brushing the fibers back up.
Right.
And then any of the infill that gets washed to the side has to be kind of redistributed back out into the.
We don't know their annual cost or anything of that, do we?
Well, they put in here $24,000 a year to maintain it, but it's something that we could drive the equipment back and forth on the field.
Yeah.
We could certainly look at the operating cost when it comes to that, us doing it versus contracting it out. But part of the fee is the equipment that comes with it to maintain it.
How does our contractual obligation to have 3 bids apply to this for the artificial turf?
As far as the overall, I think it's, the Burke would be your third bid. It's just, it's too hard, again, to make them bid.
For the artificial?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
Burke
Yeah.
bid on that also. But it really isn't a comparable bid because the quality of the Burke product isn't as good as the Field Turf product. So if we were going to consider the Burke product, I would go back to 90 and Field Turf and ask them to bid that lower quality product also. But again, I think that the way that the fibers are done, the way that it's tied into the matting, and the cool play that they have, the cool infill that they have, makes that product stand out from the other products.
Steve, Berg, who's done fields before, right, one of the things I just noted on their, one of the 3 bids for the turf, is that based on the timing of the substitution, we do not recommend approval. What do they mean by that?
I wrote that.
I'll let you write that. Sorry, thank you, Dave.
That's okay. When we send out bids, we give them, all the contractors, the opportunity to submit something that's different than what's specified. We generally give them 10 days prior to bid to submit something. And sometimes it's little things like, if we had buildings, it might be a light fixture package or something that's fairly simple. Burke, I didn't even know they were going to bid the field, but it is in their bid, so then I asked them to send more information on it, and they sent some marketing stuff. So it really wasn't submitted properly for review, because I would have liked to have, honestly, I don't know a lot about the fields. I would have gotten with Mark and Steve, but it didn't come in until bid day, and it's substantially lower in price, which also raises a concern.
Field Turf probably has the best rep of these 3 as far as what I researched, but you do this more often. Who do you recommend?
But Field Turf and 90 are the same.
Yeah.
I mean, they're using this, they're both using Field Turf.
Same product. Yeah.
The same product.
But who's the best company, do you feel?
They work together
Together,
with
okay.
each other. I would,
Field Turf is
if Field Turf was $1,000 lower, we might go to Field Turf, because they would use 90 anyway.
I think part of that
There really
is,
isn't 2 bids.
I think part of that is working with the reps also, and Chris Wedge with Field Turf has been very accommodating with answering any questions, bringing the product, taking us out to look, and you can see that pamphlet that I passed out. I think all of those fields use a Field Turf product.
Sounds like
So
a-
you
can see there's quite a few of them.
Sounds like it's a premium product.
It is a good
but
product.
You feel like it's worth it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Is it
So I
would-
safer, is it safer for the kids as well, like for, kids have knee injuries and stuff? Is that-
I think it's definitely debatable as far as falling, and but the rubber or the infill that they put in there, it's not rubber. The rubber's the very bottom. Then it's
Yeah.
like a silicone sand, and then it's this cool stuff.
Yeah.
But that, to me, I would rather fall. I think if you did a HIC test on that, it's going to come with better results than if you drop it straight on a ground field. But you're going to get some soccer players out there that are going to tell you they like the feel of a natural turf.
I wasn't saying natural versus natural, just.
Go next door.
Versus other.
There's two more fields.
Versus other AstroTurf fields.
Right.
Is that part of the reason why you recommend field turf?
Yes, yeah.
It's safer than other AstroTurf.
Well, and
I
I
guess
would
that's
not
about
recommend,
AstroTurf.
I would not recommend any type of AstroTurf. That's an outdated product. Most of the companies are moving towards this fiber with the inlet or infill. Just depends on what they're putting for the infill. Some people put coconut husk, like an organic infill in, but you got to water that. And to me, that just takes away the reason why you put an artificial turf there in the first place. And plus, if you water a corn husk field, it still has the poly fibers on the field, and it's Florida. After the rain's gone, after the water's on there, you're going to turn it into a sauna. And your coconut husk just washes away. It floats away, and you got to buy more infill. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that this product makes the most sense.
So when you have the natural field in, when you compact it down, if we don't keep that tested at the right levels, that's why the grass dies in those fields, is that correct?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons why a natural turf field. It's going to be type of play, amount of play, and maintenance. And if you're not shutting it down for rest, you're going to beat it up. Lacrosse particularly beats up fields just because of the nature of how the sport's played. I mean, the offensive defense is all isolated into one area. Soccer, you're going to consistently see the goalie tearing up the goal box. I mean, the goalies are going to 10-foot area that they're going to have torn up, and you're going to have to resod it probably twice a year. I think that that's probably the biggest reason why our fields, other than they're old, a lot of our fields are old and need to be replaced, but it's wear and tear. It's the amount of usage that are on them. And this is a facility where we have a little bit more opportunity to control how much usage. It won't just be wide open that anybody at any time can walk onto.
Yes, because with two natural turf fields, you can shut one down and rework the other. And if we needed to shut both down, we have the existing fields, not in the corridor. So we can manage that.
Yep. So I'm going to restate what I'm hearing from you all. Then that will show up on the agenda on Wednesday. It's the Arnco bid, the base bid, with one shelter. And then for the turf, we're going to add the boys and girls lacrosse and the celebration logo. And then we're going to remove the lift station and the landscape buffer. And that'll be what we ask you to approve on Wednesday.
Yeah, and asking if we can
Yes,
get them to hold that pricing
for the lift station.
for the lift station.
And and the landscaping too for that.
Okay.
Now,
What's the size of the shelter again? 25?
Yeah.
20 by 40.
40?
Danny,
Yes, 30 by 40, that's what I said.
Danny, instead of specifying a date to them, why don't you just find out how many days away it would be before they would ever get to it, and then
I can do
and then
that.
ask if they could put it in advance until then. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Versus 3 or 4 months, and they say, well, we can do that, but we have to roll all this other stuff back by another.
Steve, you're also going to talk about, I guess we have to vote on 90 versus field turf or Burke.
Yeah, it sounded like, to me, it's $1,000 difference. You're going to get the same quality either way. It makes sense to save $1,000.
Yes, now, before, 90 is going to be the one doing the painting of the turf, the markings, right? So that's not going under the Arnco bid.
No, it would be they listed the same exact costs for their additions as field turf did. So it's
No, I'm saying, when you included the markings for the field, you put them under Arnco.
No, we have 2 separate agenda items that will be presented to you. The first one will be for Arnco, and it'll be for the one shelter, including the one shelter, minus the lift station and the landscape buffer. The second agenda item will be for 90 turf with the boys and girls lacrosse and the celebration.
Okay, thank you.
As far as the 2 companies go, 90 and field turf, is there the warranty's the same through both, I would assume?
I think everything was exactly the same, other than the price.
And
And they told us that they would bid them both, because they both came and talked to us, and they said, bid us both, and we'll see which one comes out lower, and they both were okay with whichever one came out lower.
And
It was kind of strange how they do it.
Was that field turf or 90 that came out here that day when we went down to the high school?
It was both, actually.
That was both,
Together,
okay.
because they work together on the high school field also.
Okay.
Cool. So one new thing and one recap. As part of the Wednesday discussion, I'd still like to see an overall projection of total costs So we have what you just outlined, Steve. And then, should we choose to do a concession stand, roughly $500,000? And is there anything else, so that we're not blindsided, and the new board is not blindsided in 6 months that says, oh, by the way, we need another 75 for this, another 125 for that? Total costs.
Well, I think for that question, what we have as the overall plan, which is the road, the sidewalk, the parking lot, the sidewalk to the fields, the turf, the synthetic turf, the Musco LED lighting, that's what was planned conceptually for the athletic field complex. I don't know what the costs are going to be for the building, because I don't know what the building's going to look like. If the building doubles in size, based on what we hear from the feedback of the community,
He's done it. It's about $500,000.
No, I'm not talking about that building. I'm talking about.
That's fine.
So I think what I'm saying is there's just too many unanswered questions on future cost. I know that some of the costs that were included when you were looking at the overall build out of the Civic Corridor were for a boardwalk connector in the North Village, and the question is who does a boardwalk connector? Should it be CROA, or does the development district want to do the boardwalk connector? So,
or none.
Or none. Maybe there's not one there at all. So I think that it's hard to anticipate what that additional cost will be, but I can tell you from the standpoint of this bid, if Armco is selected, they're going to be held accountable to build what they're. Now, there always can be some sort of complication that comes about that requires a change order.
Right.
Hopefully it's not a $100,000 change order, but there's always something that.
But I'm sure Danny's confident in.
We do our best to think through every possible complication, but.
There's a contingency in it, right?
Well, there's no, and I was going to bring that up. Well, you should have a contingency. I'll work with Steve, because I know one of the other things I said in the addendum was that the CROA would pay for the county engineering fees. We won't know what that is until we actually, that someone fills out the form. So there is going to be some cost there. So let's get together to see, make sure we have everything covered, and then also add a contingency of, pick a number, just so you have some money that can be used for items that come up along the way.
But Danny, after this is bid, I heard you say a while ago that generally it's only owner changes that tend to run this up. After it's bid, it's pretty much set in stone.
Well, majority is owner changes. Other things I'm thinking of, not KUA, who's the power? Duke Energy may have a cost to put a transformer in or something, which is not included in Armco's bid. So there's going to be some things that pop up along the way, things like that, things like the engineering fees, and we'll get our heads together to try to put a list of possible things to be aware of. But there's also going to be things that we're not aware of, and so you need a bucket of money that you can pull out, because sometimes it's time sensitive on needing something. Right? If I knew what it was, I'd tell you. But there's sometimes along construction that you need $2,000 for something.
Yeah, and I know that there was discussion months ago about whether you have benches or a signboard, or what do you call it, scoreboard, various things. Those are all add-ons. That's not part of the contract.
Correct.
And that could come 5 years from now.
And Danny, it's so visible from 192. Do we have fencing and security in the plan?
There's fencing completely around
the fencing around
the whole project.
Are we doing like with the dog?
It's not part of this, but it's something we can look at.
Actually, it's visible from 417, not 192.
Right, because you
Yeah,
got water.
417.
And no one stops on 417 through there.
Well, you're right.
But fencing is
I stand
included.
corrected, 417, yeah.
Similar fence as the dog park, the decorative fence along the road.
Same height.
And then
Yeah.
chain link, black vinyl, I believe. Yeah, black vinyl chain link around the portion that doesn't face the road.
Well, aesthetically, that's going to work out good, too.
Such a Celebration Avenue.
And a serious buffering, with 2 rows of shrubs and such.
But I think if we think that fencing is going to be important and that that's going to be important to do, that's part of the overall
That's
project,
part of the overall project.
not part of this contract, but part of the overall project. Which was part of the larger discussion as we were moving forward 6 or 8 months ago and doing the authorizations that you talked about, Steve, because the real question, one of the base questions on Wednesday is whether to go forward at all. Whether to go forward at all, not which vendor, whether to go forward, because what we wanted was the full cost of the entire project. So let's put those on the table now with our best estimate that if it's going to cost $100K for fencing, I mean, I don't have a
Part
clue.
of this-
So the fencing is in here?
Fencing is in here.
So the only things we're talking about additional to finish off that project then would be what you do with the golf course property. If you want to throw a number out there, throw 4 million, 4.5 million, whatever number you want for that, depending on how big that is. The other piece then to finalize that entire project would be the boardwalk connector. And that, I think we got estimates at $700,000, $800,000, $900,000.
To North Village, to North Village.
And the concession building.
And then the $500,000 for the concession building.
Okay.
So if you were to do all of those things, maybe another $5 to $6 million, if you were to do all those things.
Danny, there's already a fence all the way up through there that's on the far side of the gas line. That gas line easement, there's already 417, when it was built, put a fence, a chain link fence all the way up through there. Are we putting something else in addition on this side of that chain link? Tell me.
No, that stays.
No,
Yeah,
that is the fence.
That stays, but there is fencing around.
Because there's a road that would be in between the fence, that would be in between the 417 and the field.
It'll look just like CDD. I mean, you'll
Yeah.
have
The
some.
road that runs down.
No, actually, the road that runs through there will be only the 10-foot sidewalk beside the fields.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. There's a full road to from the adjacent to the golf course property, whatever that distance is.
Right.
And then you're right, it's the 10
It's
foot.
780 feet of regular road pulling into the parking lot.
Plus the
And then you
Oh, I see
have
what you're
a
saying.
10-foot
Yeah,
wide
okay.
road that runs all the way up, and then there's a little T at the end of it, so a fire truck can turn around and come back out.
Right.
That particular thing actually added $100 and something thousand on, because it has to support the weight of a fire truck going in and out.
I remember it was 9,000.
Let me get back to the thought I was trying to get out here, though. So, there's an additional fence somewhere else, if so, where? Oh, but you included that fence.
All fencing is included. The netting between the fields, was there 3 sets of netting, I believe, that divides the fields, and that's 20 feet or 24 feet
So you
tall
can't
or
kick
so.
balls there with
That's
balls.
included also.
And we're fencing along the golf course property.
Yes.
The
And
the golf course
the
itself,
golf
not
course
parcel
itself.
D.
Yeah.
Right,
And this also includes the buffering landscaping?
it does. I think the landscaping cost is $500,000 or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
It's huge, it's huge.
Paul, you want to go into the landscaping business once we're out of here?
There was something else that was like.
We had some other business, I think we were going to do it.
Really easy money. What was that?
All right, so where are we at, guys?
Well,
Have we been listed up?
I need
Got
to,
more?
well, yes, of course I have more, I always have more. Just going back to really the information that I feel I needed, really wasn't present till noon today when you gave us the complete information. I would like to see it printed, and I would like, as you said, if you can get the breakdown of the budgets.
I'll give Debbie this copy of it, if you'd like, and then that way.
Is that all the financials or just the
This is the
drawings?
specs, this is the
No, like
specifications
the
of it.
information where you gave the RFP out with the specs on it and the.
That's all on the,
It's
It's
what
on
I
the,
said, it's just in here today, but like basically, we haven't had the opportunity to look at that and break down the whole thing, so I still have a concern about that.
Is that what you gave, what you had just January 31st? That information that,
Well,
Yeah,
what I
those.
sent out was I just got the digital copies today too,
Yeah.
but I had a hard copy in my office, and this is what I offered everyone to come look at.
did I ask everybody to take?
This is the engineering specification, so it has the irrigation, it has the electrical, it has landscaping. I mean, there's a copy of it here if you'd like it. And I'm sure I
They're
can
beautiful,
get-
and I know you
get
have
some
those,
more
but I'm not an engineer, so what I wanted to look at was the actual written material and the numbers, which is how I went about doing the golf cart.
the bids, you want to look at the bids?
That is what I sent out though, back when I sent, when that.
So you want the invitation to
Like
bid
all
that
the
Dan wrote?
subcontractor bid, all the
Yes.
subcontractors, the information.
Yeah. That's the bid, this is the specifications that go along with it.
Yeah, you don't want the specs, you just want the subcontractor bid, well, the subs.
I wanted everything that we got at noon to have time to look at it, that's all. It just feels like it's disjointed, and we're not looking at the long-range plan where we
Right,
could even
sort of why we
consider.
hired Danny, Danny.
Yeah,
That's why we hired him.
yeah, but it looks like we also, from what we originally discussed, cut out a lot of things that I feel were important also to the teams.
Well, then we did it.
The coverage, the storage, like, one of the things that they expressed was very important was storage, and they said, where are we gonna put everything, so.
Well, that's in the building, that's in the concession building.
But we're not building it.
Right.
We're not building it.
So then step up and say, we're going to build a building, and I'll write another check for $500,000.
It's not included in anything to look at.
Right,
I don't think we have money.
exactly.
So, Tim, I don't know what to tell you.
So but you can't put something in
Let's build a
that's not
building and
there.
not build a soccer field. That's what I'm doing.
Well, here's the deal. We can, you know, the
We
next,
got to build a
There you go.
soccer field.
There you go.
Can't have it without
There
paying
you
for
go.
it.
Yeah, that's an option.
It's an option.
It is an option.
Can I clarify? Okay. Who wants copies of things? Is it just Debbie? And if so, do you want to come to my office and I can show you on the screen
Okay.
before I make, copies of 75 sheets of drawings and all the other stuff that's in there, and I can do that, but maybe if you just come sit with me, we can look at it, and then I can get you copies of whatever
Right.
you want. Is that?
I think you're adequate at your job, Danny, so I don't want to see it.
If it makes you feel better, I don't have a copy either.
I insisted on having an owner's representative because I'm not an engineer either.
I know.
And some of this stuff I completely understand. Some of it, I need an engineering degree to understand.
That's why I brought them in for the golf park. We were on the wrong track, and they know what they're doing, they know their community, but again, I just don't want to go from what we originally talked about and start leaving out A, B, C, and the price is still
Can we move on?
where we were at.
We have a comment or a question from the audience. Do we want to
anybody
recognize?
want to recognize Mr. Gunn?
I'll recognize Gary.
Can you come to the mic, though, because it is being broadcast at home?
This week.
Sure, yeah, I think you have 3 minutes.
No, they're great.
We'll take 60.
I detect that a lot of you are having trouble keeping track of what is and what isn't in the bid. It is confusing. Well, the rest of us out here are even more confused, particularly the people watching on television. So here's what I recommend. We have a beautiful big screen TV here. Put a map up of what it looks like so far so we can all refer to it and point to it. Number 2, pull in a whiteboard, and as we go through what's in there, write it down on a whiteboard. Fencing, lift station, landscaping, 3 fields, and when we get it all up there on the whiteboard, then management puts it on a PowerPoint slide for Wednesday, so we can all see it together.
Oh, Gary, we tried to have this thing work and we couldn't make the connection. All right, where's Patrick at?
Anybody else?
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, it's 6:30, guys.
All right, where are we going? Any more?
Steve, are you comfortable with what you need or what you have?
Yes, I'm going to,
Okay.
what I stated will be on the agenda and then for Wednesday.
All right.
We'll work on getting that thing up and running.
And maybe incorporating some of what Gary said.
All right,
I would just want to thank Danny. I just
And
want to say,
Mark.
no, you don't go anywhere. Just want to say thank you. Thank you for all your work and your accepting the grilling.
Mark did a lot of work, too. Thank Mark, too. Mark.
Well, he's a
I
smart
see him do the grilling.
Mark's smarter, he sat
He
down.
didn't get it from Mike.
We just started with Danny.
All right, so agenda item number 2 is to discuss a community center interlocal agreement. Okay, everybody just got a recent update.
Yes.
Yesterday, I guess it was.
Yeah, so,
What's different?
I have just two things that I had just to kick off the fun here. That I wanted to know if we could define what, and I know this was taken because I saw the similarities to our existing recreational guidelines, but can we define what celebration government and community associations and Osceola County government means?
The way that they explained that to me was if they wanted to have a post-hurricane meeting, if they wanted to allow FEMA, if they wanted to have a town hall that have one of the commissioners come or county manager come and talk to the residents, it would be an official government function, not
Gotcha.
Not a Kissimmee resident utilizing it for
Whatever. Yeah, okay. And then I didn't see, and I just maybe didn't understand the legalese in here somewhere, but I saw that we have the priority usage table, but I didn't see anywhere where it stated that CROA was responsible for the programming in accordance with the priority usage table.
There is a section, I believe, that they put in this agreement.
Section 7.
7?
Yeah, it's for the operations, maintenance, and then profits, rent, fees, income, and other proceeds.
Yeah, but I know this is going to sound dumb, but does it matter? I mean, I'm not a lawyer. That's why we pay someone to look at it. But it says this, that talks to me about the operation and maintenance costs. But that to me is like cleaning the building and maintaining the building and painting the thing. But it doesn't actually talk about where we're responsible for the actual scheduling in accordance with this priority usage table.
I'd have to go back through and find out exactly where that is in there. But I can tell you, this has not gone to the attorney because we have pumped our brakes considerably with this project because of some feedback that we've heard from the board and from the residents. This is not being fast-tracked at all. This is just conversations back and forth with the county on what an interlocal agreement could possibly look like moving forward. So there's plenty of time for board members or for residents or for us to have a community meeting or however we want to move it forward to add input on what should go into this interlocal agreement. I think this is kind of the base of what the county is thinking of what this looks like for the $2.75 million
This is still
capital
early
contribution.
draft.
And I make sure that the draft watermark's on there because this is not in the final stages yet.
So what is different in what was provided electronically and what we got hard copy? Because I marked up the hard copy.
It's section
Only
7.
only that page.
Yeah, that section 7 was, because I asked them, would you, I sent them the recreation program plan. I said, we need to define what public usage is. We have our definition of how our facilities will be utilized. Would you add this to this agreement? And then my second question was, would you give me a new copy of what this looks like so that I can give it to the board so that you all can discuss? And this is what this looks like. I still don't think it's close. I still think that there's probably some work on even what they added here, because I think that it needs to be reprioritized. If you look at number 9, that's celebration and county resident for a private event. Should that be above clubs or social organizations? I mean, I think that that needs to be looked at. I don't think that that's ready for just to be sent for approval.
Yeah, my main comment was on section 7 when I looked at the difference in agreements. And Robert Mendick, who you were working on with the agreement, the concern I have is in his email, because our park and rec worked for a very long time to get that priority straight. Who's the government, the celebration, everything else. I think this, although the language doesn't look clear, I think his intention is different from what we had discussed, that we would keep that in place. In his email, he said, as long as we are treated the same as celebration government and community associations, we are good. As long as any Osceola County residents are not treated any differently than celebration residents, we are good. My problem is, and I don't want to throw out $2.75 million, but this discussion differs from, I believe, what you said your intent is, and we as an HOA cannot have our homeowners pay fees and have the Osceola residents government have the same as, for example, if they want a meeting the same as you or CDD, they have equal priority. And also for all of their groups, their Boy Scout has equal priority to our Boy Scouts. I'm just using this for an example. I can't, I think that's my biggest problem with the agreement. I can't.
I think the proof's got to be in the agreement. So if I could offer a suggestion, I mean, I think that you all are at your last meeting here. You're not going to approve a community center or an interlocal agreement with Osceola County at your meeting on Wednesday. We'll make that perfectly clear, unless something changes.
Can you repeat that, Steve?
We will not be approving an interlocal agreement on Wednesday. So my recommendation would be to allow the election to finalize, have our new board members take their seat, and then we can have a workshop to talk about how the board wants us to proceed with getting feedback and input from the community,
right,
and then how they want us to proceed with going through the conversations with the government. Because I don't want to be working one direction and have the new board say we should be moving in a completely different direction.
Right, but this, because it was such a different direction than we had previously discussed about how the usage would go with that committee.
I agree with you.
Hold on, let me just, then I don't want to, when we're looking at the ball fields and the building going here, again, I have to look at all of it together, then I'm saying, we're not going to have the 2.75 possibly for the building if this is the conditions, because we have to look at our HOA and our residents, our homeowners.
Or you push back on them harder and say this is exactly what we're looking for.
I think section
right, but that's why I say
7
I'm trying to look at it together.
I think section 7 just needs a little more elaboration that says this is the priority. This is the priority by which this building or these events will be managed, and non-celebration event and program rental and non-celebration or government. County government is 12 and 13. Right. That flies in the exact opposite of what she just read in that.
I agree. And what Robert had said in his email was not what Dave Tomac said to me when I talked to him. So I think it just
I
needs some
understand
more
that,
work.
so, yeah.
And we need to, but again, I don't
But it's
think.
what's written, so that's.
Yeah,
what you're
no,
doing.
and that's okay, but I don't think that I will not, I'll repeat it again, I will not be asking you all to vote on an interlocal agreement or a community center until I have an opportunity to work with the new board on exactly what they think the best way to move this interlocal agreement forward.
Right, but we are looking at voting on the fields, and I'm just saying it would be nice if we could have looked at this as a complete project, and I just feel like this has got.
Well, I don't know if we can intertwine the whole project with just this interlocal agreement. This interlocal agreement has specifically to do with the community center.
Right.
Right, but it's a building that I think would have, we were looking at to flow nicely with the fields
I
and the
don't think we can
storage
take
and
a
the.
quantum leap that the county will have the ability to be able to use our fields because
Right.
they happen to have given us this.
No,
money
we're
for
not
the
talking
community
about,
center.
this is only for the building, not the fields. I'm not taking that leap to, I got the difference between the fields and the building. I'm just saying the building is an integral part of the corridor, and we're looking at this, and I think it was being looked at for possibly for storage or meeting space.
Yeah, but I still have an issue with the pecking order.
Well, that is my issue.
Right.
Well,
That's
I
why-
think
that is my
David's
issue.
issue is takes us even higher up in the air than this issue, because his conversation has been, should it be at an expansion of the 851 building? Should it be Stetson? Should it be at the golf course property? And I think that if you want to ask that question takes precedence over the prioritization listing of
Well,
utilizing.
I think the prioritization is going to stand no matter what building we're in. I do think it's important.
Well, if you utilize your own dollars for your own facility, then
Well, then we
there are
own the
no
building.
stipulations,
Yeah, but we're
right?
not taking their money.
Has nothing to do
But if
with
we take their money, I think this priority thing is important. It's a major thing.
That's exactly it. The
That's the
issue,
point.
though, is if we take their money,
Mm-hmm.
we move forward with the Civic Center a lot earlier versus if we go to buy another
Right.
building or expand this, it's years down the road.
I get
It just
that.
delays it.
There's,
But either way, we
There's-
have what's been established by the Parks and Recs.
sorry, you finished, Debbie, or not?
Yeah. I'm fine.
Okay, sorry. There's three things I want to get out real quick, because I may or may not be on the board in another 2 months. First is, public purpose and public use has not been defined anywhere.
That's true.
I'm not an attorney. I've read some attorney general opinions that may or may not be completely on point with this. We need to really figure out what the county's buying, or what we're losing if they give us that money, however we want to look at it that way. I would suggest that we use an attorney, not our general counsel, someone like Latham that CDD uses, if they can get a conflict waiver. Because if they're going to represent CDD on the same, if we do go forward and they represent CDD, but I don't think that would be a problem with getting a conflict waiver on that, because they deal with public purpose, public use, day in and day out with everything they do with CDDs. Larson doesn't do that. We need someone, and it may not be this particular attorney, but we need a firm that will give us a firm backing as to what public purpose is and such. We also have no indemnification from the county. They can come through and say, you know what, if you do all this stuff, we'll count that as public purpose. If we get sued a year and a half down the road, we're the people on the suit. We're the ones that have to live for it another 24 years past then, whatever a judge would say we have to do or not do because of public purpose. So those are issues that need to be looked at in a very in-depth way. Thank you.
Okay, Adam had his hand up for a second. Anybody want to, I'll recognize Adam. Go ahead.
I'll second it.
Okay, Adam.
Hi, Adam.
Adam Parrish, 405 Sycamore. I think maybe a good question as you go through this is, what kind of spaces are needed for usage? So is it more rooms like this? Is it more rooms that do indoor athletics? Is it more rooms with seating? I think before we start looking at different boxes, whether that's Stetson or building something new or expanding this, you got to get to the core question, whether it's this group or another group or the Parks and Rec Committee, what boxes are needed and what flavors they come in, so that then you can go find out what the best value is. So, that's it.
Well, I will say one thing in regard to that, is that the county said they would sponsor focus group meetings as far as that particular building. And we've already talked about getting the community together to address that.
So addressing that, the survey that just closed last week, the preliminary results will be shared on Wednesday. That helps to
asking those
start to
questions.
answer that. So two technical questions. One is, if this were to be signed, does this apply to new construction only, or might it apply to a revamp and, if you will, expansion, extension, modification of this building and/or Stetson? So that's a question.
With this interlocal agreement, or are you talking about if you took
Interlocal
the dollars
agreement.
from?
They're going to provide 2-point-some million, all these conditions. Is it just a new building from earth up?
Yes, so the answer to your first question is that the county has only been talking to us about for a new building. We have not had any discussions with them about providing dollars to renovate another building.
So that's just a question. The second is, I know that this is on the current budget year for the county. So is there a timeline to reach some closure? This is guidance to the new board. We have to resolve this by April, by May, by June for this budget year?
Right.
And if the new board were to say, well, we'll decide in November, which is fine, might this similar funding be available a year from now?
Well, the
I don't- that's
county,
a question.
the county is bringing this project and these dollars to us because of a conversation we had with Commissioner Chowdhury and with Beth Ann Knight. They sent their officials out to say, well, what are your needs? Because we
Right.
showed them the
Right.
civic corridor and we talked a little bit about our dreams. So they said, well, what are your needs? And based on that conversation, they said, well, what if we were able to provide you $2.75 million? The first part of that contribution would have been to, out of this this year's fiscal year for the county, to be able to do the engineering, the design, the town hall meetings, the whatever part of that initial process is, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
The second part of the money would not even be available until October 1 of next year, because that's their new fiscal year, the $2.5 million.
Of this year.
But it would be their new fiscal year, October 1 of 2018 is when
Got it.
their fiscal year starts.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay. And did the 250,000 have to be spent by the end of March?
No, it doesn't have to be spent now.
Okay.
I think the way that they wrote this interlocal agreement was it's 400 and something days for the entire project to be completed.
Once we sign.
After you
Once it's
enter-
signed.
after you enter into the agreement, if you enter into the agreement. And again, I don't think the county's trying to jam this building down our throats either. I think that they just said, hey, we have a hole in our recreation, our facility master plan that needs to be met. We hear a lot from Celebration residents that we don't build anything within Celebration. Why don't we work on an interlocal agreement to do that? That was how this conversation started.
Would she up for reelection?
Nothing more, nothing less.
Would she up for reelection?
Not yet.
No? Oh, we still got some timing there?
Well, you can still file. You want to file?
So, no, I just, people give money during
All right,
interesting times.
So basically, we're not going to do anything at all regarding the interlocal agreement until after the next board gets together, okay? So can we move forward then on anything else we want to move forward?
So typos in here, spelling errors, I can forward separately and not on tape.
Anything that you all would like to send me with your comments for this before you're off the board, or if you're still on the board, that's fine too. And then when the new board's seated, I'll ask, I mean, any candidates now could send me feedback also, because they all have a copy of it. They probably need the newer one, but yeah, any feedback, because right now it's just back and forth with the county to try and get the agreement to make sense.
If you're going to do that, please send it to the rest of the board.
I'll send it, yeah, I'll copy the board.
Steve, if you'll hold the master copy on this, so we can, because I see some stuff I want to make corrections on too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I found a few typos, spelling errors.
Right, and the meeting with Peggy, you had asked
Yeah.
if there was any input. Is this something that we can discuss on that or not?
So I had a meeting scheduled for this morning with Beth Ann Knight. Beth Ann and I, as administrators, as management, are meeting separately just to talk about things that we can help with for the community. And she canceled for the meeting today. She had something else come up. So she rescheduled for March 16th. The new board will be on by then, so anything that the new board would like me to talk about. But I can tell you that the Commissioner Chowdhury meeting was scheduled for March 21st. And I did speak with Commissioner Chowdhury, and she did say that she'd like to try and get both boards together, the CDD and the CROA board together at the
Yes.
same time. So the CDD board, I reached out to them, and they can't schedule until after the 13th because they want their board to talk about it at a public meeting. And then your new board doesn't come on until the 6th. So I'm going to get in touch with Commissioner Chowdhury and say I'm just going to put it on hold while we try and get all the logistics worked out between the two boards.
Thanks.
All right, so next agenda item is review the cell service reporting.
I don't have anything to present to you today, other than I know that there was some back and forth emails about what you all wanted to see in the management reports. Again, I think you have a new board coming in a week, and they may want to see something different. So the question is, do you want management to spend time now on researching those reports? Would you like to just continue to give us some feedback on what you're looking for, what it helps you to make decisions from cell service? But I played with it quite a bit. And I think what's going to need to happen is for me to send it to cell service to Excelia and ask them to give us a customized report. Because what you see in your management report this month is a 30-day that shows the number of requests that we got in, how many were completed, how many were submitted, how many were, the different nomenclature there. And then I did another one for 90 days so that you can see that. But I still don't think that that's what you're looking for.
Eric?
Not what we had talked about last time.
But candidly, it's not going to matter. I'm the only pain in the butt about it. So I think we just wait until the new board's in there and they can figure out their level of detail, and then I'll stand at that podium and ask my questions as a resident of 1126 Mosaic Drive and hold everyone else accountable.
Steve, I would actually like to move. I'd like to go outside and see if there's some other service besides cell service that provides this, because I'm not pleased with the app. If you go to report something and you type something in the description box there, you lose all that information. You can't see it, and you can't go back and edit it. So to me, that's a pain in the neck.
You definitely have to follow the rules.
Jack,
when you're on that
and then the other thing is, when we talk about reporting issues, part of my problem is I'm getting completed stuff that's not completed. Okay?
We talked about that, yeah.
But it's not, this was not from our group, but it supposedly everything we send to CDD, the CDD handles. Well, I wrote up an issue, and it wasn't completed. It got back to me, it says completed, so I just sent it back to him again and said, it's not completed. Right. So you may be asking how many things are being completed in 30 days. I'm asking how many things were really completed in 30 days.
Exactly. Well, and I think as we explore that, we have to look at what we have who we have the authority to hold accountable. And I have service areas, and I have operations and maintenance.
I'm not trying to look for accountability. I'm trying to look for certainty. What are we really doing? Are we getting it done?
Well, I think so. I'll give a good example. So a prime example of this was I reported a planter that was broken on a street, that there was a pot that was missing.
Okay.
I guarantee you no one knew that that pot was missing but me, because I knew that the pot was missing and it wasn't there anymore. So but I wasn't, it looks nice on my porch. But the point is that the way that I definitively knew that it was done was that Todd put a picture of the pot, of the new one that they put in. He took a picture of it, and I see this nice blue pot there with flowers in it, and so I knew it was done. And if someone came by the next day and hit it with a car or something and it was disappeared, I would go back and say, Todd, what the heck? You said it was done, but it's not done. And he said, no, I put a new one out there, but someone came and hit it the next day. Here, there's a picture in the system, and it shows you. So I know I keep harping this whole take a picture of the stupid thing, but take a picture of the stupid thing, because then it's really easy to say, was it done or was it not done? So, but once again, those things take time, and I think we're just now starting to see that Todd and the rest of the team actually have time to do those sort of things, that they're not chasing a landscaping company around trying to just fix the grass.
Well, Eric, if I can add to that too, I think that cell service or any tool that we're going to utilize really just kind of amplifies the problem. I mean, it's a major symptom of the real problem that we were facing. And the real problem that we were facing last year is the one contractor that we had doing all the landscaping fell way behind. And when they fall behind, residents, Eric, they go out and they put in, here's what needs to be done. And those just piled up, and eventually you can't breathe anymore. I mean, you just can't get to them all. So we had to fix the problem, and I think we've done a pretty good job of that up to this point by hiring 2 new contractors, splitting out service areas from parks and buildings, and I think we're seeing good results because both Todd and Susanna now are on top of their cell service orders. They were able to get rid of all the old ones, close them all out, and start anew with, when they get a pot, they can say, we'll have that pot replaced in 5 days. And then if 5 days comes and it's not replaced, we have to put a reason why. So,
Well, I think as much as Jack, whatever the frustration was with that one issue, overall, I think it was a very, very good system because we were able to hold and knowing we were that behind. We didn't know, I don't think we were that behind. Eric points it out, he's like, look, we've got all these things that aren't closed. And I think we need to stay with the system until we can find something better.
I'm looking for the
Yeah, I
side of
wouldn't
user
dump
friendliness.
baby in the bathwater.
It needs work.
Well,
It's definitely something we can address during strategic planning, though. We can identify whether that's something we want to spend our time on over the next year.
Start typing, it disappears, you keep coming back.
Yeah, and then just dovetailing that, I know we've talked about a maintenance reporting system that Todd has researched, and I know he's talked about seller service dovetailing into that. Is there some better package that integrates everything better? And then a little higher level than that, we've authorized a revamp of the website. So might all three of those electronic systems, might they work better together, or is that putting things together that shouldn't be put together? So that's a large question.
You could report seller service issues on your computer.
Yeah, so those just become larger questions. I don't know how they fit together already.
Yeah, and I think that's a great strategic focus area if that comes out of what the board is pushing us towards.
Making things work better for management, for Todd, and for the residents.
Okay. So we've kicked another one down the road, right?
Okay, so let's talk about
That's what we're
cameras.
doing.
All right, let's look at discuss the entry and exit camera system.
So at the last board meeting, it was requested that we go out and we try to find a consultant that would be able to help us determine not only for this project the feasibility of it, but also for overall assets throughout the rest of the community. I went on and posted on the CAI forums, which failed me because the only people that really responded back are the people that wanted to sell us something. What we need is an independent third-party consultant. It is someone that's separate from everything. We had a couple of responses from people. Most, when they found out kind of what we were trying to do, they said, we're too expensive for an HOA. They flat out came out and said it. They said, we're not interested, and we're not even going to give you a cost, whatever. The one gentleman who essentially would give me the time of day that's being very good is the same gentleman that came in. His company came in and partnered with the sheriff previously to do the active shooter presentation that was done in this building. And so he had come in, he's familiar with the community, he knows what's going on. They do consulting work for master plan communities, corporations, all sorts of stuff. This is what they do. And so he said that the way that it normally works is he said that the problem is that you don't know how much it's going to be until you get started with the whole thing, because it depends on the scope. Do you want them to look at one piece, or do you want to look at the whole package? I said, well, we're likely going to look at the whole package, and I kind of want to know a worst case scenario and how much something like this would cost. And so he said that it's billed out usually by a day rate for each thing. It's normally about between $1,500 and $2,000 a day. And he estimated that it would be a week of time, so a full 5 days, a work week, to do a review and a master plan for the community. That was his rough estimate. And so I said that I was going to bring that forward to our workshop, discuss it, and see if it was something that, you know, we were even interested in. And I think the challenge, though, is that I don't necessarily, I mean, obviously, we're not going to get that review done between now and Wednesday. So I think that, you know, it's something that I can package all that up, put it together, give it to Steve, and then Steve can then present it in the strategic planning workshop to see if it's something that the next board would even want to consider, or if it's something they just throw out the window and say, have a nice day. And I was up front with him, too. I said, we're in this weird transition time, and he said that was fine, just let him know either way.
So this would be a review and master plan of an entry and exit camera system?
No, it would be of the entire community.
Of
Security in general.
overall security.
Overall, so for instance, he brought up, you know, he comes down here, he specifically mentioned that, you know, he came up with his family when we used to have fireworks for 4th of July. He said, there's some things that probably could be addressed from the HOA side that we could look at maybe doing. So he's helped a lot of communities, gated and non-gated, because that was the big thing, that, you know, we're not a gated community. And he said, oh yeah, no, we do that all the time, for looking at not only physical security, but then also, is there things that we could change from a policy and some procedures standpoint that we might want to look at, you know, from a, how often is something checked, or how often is, such and such done, or when we have an event, we always have a emergency communications plan, no matter how basic it is. Simple stuff like that. He said that's all stuff that they review as part of, that's what his company does. So, but.
It's amazing. Sometimes there are simple solutions like that. I know my wife always talks about at Darden Restaurant. So they brought in a security guy because they were getting robbed right and left. And he said, if anybody leaves the back door open unlocked, then they're fired. They're immediately fired. And you cannot compromise on that. And I mean, literally within 6 months. I mean, and they had some incidents where a robbery happened because the guy was the hero. The manager was the hero, but they still fired him because they said he left that thing. Eliminated, robberies altogether. So, it's amazing some of the solutions they might be able to come up with that are just not real expensive.
Right.
And could really.
And I was very clear to him that, this would be coming from the HOA side, that we're not a government, we're not any sort of thing like that. And he was more than familiar with kind of how that relationship worked. And so what I figured I'd do is I'd get all of that information that I have from him, as well as the couple of other people that I spoke to. I'm going to package all that up, give it over to Steve, and then we add it to the list. So then that way they can figure out what they want to do.
Eric, is that something you think we should look at for the task force too, since we have the sheriff involved and the CDD and the other entities? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you guys feel about that?
Well, yeah, I think there's some overlap dovetailing with the task force.
Yeah. And just be careful with that, because he's charging $1,500, $2,000 a day. You don't want him tied up in a task force that's dragging.
No,
because he may ask them some key questions that they address, and I think also some of the survey, the comments that we've had, survey and safety and security, I think can be other input.
And the thing for him is that he, I forget the association that he's a member of, but it was the same association that I went out. They're technically independent security consultants, and part of one of their requirements is that they do not hold a relationship with any vendor or security contractor or anything like that. So all they're doing is they're purely
home runner.
Doing that. That's all they do. Now, I said on the flip side of that is I'm not going to be able to negotiate you a discount. But he said, but that's not what we do. We're here to give you a strategy, and they don't even make company recommendations or equipment recommendations or anything.
They come along and say, you guys don't need to do anything.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Here and there kind of stuff too.
And on the flip side of this whole thing, I always like to give the other side of the issue is, number one, security isn't in our documents for something that we as an HOA should be handling. Number two, whenever an HOA gets into any security type things and then turns around and gets sued for not providing enough security, that's a legal thing that I believe Thomas Layton's already mentioned in the past. Section 190, of course, which promulgates CDDs, does give CDDs the security portion. So while I think maybe we should do, if you want to do research, yes, I think if it's going to be done, especially since it's got to be done on CDD property, as far as we're doing cameras or things like that, then it needs to go through CDD and get enough people up there in a meeting to tell them that's what people want, if that's what people want. Paul was talking about Darden greatly reducing their burglaries. Well, Jerry Weiland will tell you that 82% of the cars in Celebration that get broken into are unlocked. And if you lock your car, you can reduce burglaries in Celebration by 82%.
We should fire everyone that leaves their car unlocked.
There you go.
Let's do that.
So that's part of it. And the other portion is what's our end game as far as what do we expect to gain out of doing even this portion of it. And I don't necessarily want to hear it right now because this is a new board to hear, but what do you have to gain should be defined. We've only got now, if you look at the car burglaries that's been down on the boulevard, let's say, they were quite a bit. They lasted for a short while. They caught the one set of tire stealers, let's say, the wheels and tires that were disappearing. But they were doing that not in Celebration only, they were doing that over in a 3 or 4 county area. I'd have to really see what this person might bring, or of course you're going to package that up and bring it to the next board. But I'd like to see what that is that we might expect to gain out of this type of consulting. And I want to make sure also that we don't get off into this security quagmire where you run into legal problems later because of it.
Right, and that was another reason why we did the community task force and not have it under HOA, because we don't handle security. That's why it's the CDD and the sheriffs, and again, it's just a group that is looking at it, because honestly, it's not what we do. And legally, you can ask Tom Slayton, who handled the Trayvon Martin case. It's not anything you want to be involved in, and that's why we were trying to facilitate this with the community to all work together for a solution, not have it be the HOA solution. So that was the reasoning on that.
Let me add one thing about the community task force, okay? I think the composition of the task force requires the input of the sheriff, the West 192 sheriff, okay? That is a requirement, because he's
Russ Gibson said he would come and help.
Well, the one, West 192 is what I'm looking for at least, but
Okay.
because he's the one that can make the decision as far as manpower and stuff that he can provide for us. I mean, I appreciate Jerry coming, but he doesn't have that ability to make those decisions.
Well, I'm sure if Russ asks, he will be happy to.
Well, if he's appointed by Russ, it's fine, but
Yeah.
he needs the authority then. So we need to go to a little higher up then.
So, and the only other thing that I wanted to mention is that when we looked at this, we're looking at it from a concept of not just safety, or excuse me, not just security, but safety as well. So like one of the examples that he brought up, and he said, this isn't something necessarily I'm recommending to you, but it's just an idea, because I said, we're not focused on security only. And he brought up, oh, you have these Food Truck Friday events. He said, well, in one area we had a problem where they had a very enclosed space where they had all of these food trucks operating, they all had generators. So what they did when they rebuilt their building is they put in 220-volt outlets in their parking lot so that the food truck could plug right in and they wouldn't run a generator. So they were looking at it from a fire safety standpoint as well. And so it's if we're looking at simple things like that, these are all questions that I think that the new board can figure out if they want to even do or not do. So, but it's, you know, it is what it is at that point. So I'll get all this stuff buttoned up and I'll shoot it over to you and you can have it for their strategic stuff.
Can we
So
find out what it costs to get some feeds for the food trucks?
that was just an idea. Todd's cringing over there right now. But I just see boring under the parking lot and all that, you know.
Thank you, Eric, for doing all that.
Oh, there you go.
Wish you could retrofit that.
All right.
Thank you for doing all that.
Have we finished this one then? Are there any further things you'd like to bring up?
I adjourn.
Okay.
Bye.
I think you need to move for that. It's a workshop.
All right, thank you, everybody.
I adjourned about
And Rachel, if you'll turn it off.
Steve, you want to get the camera?
Oh, yeah, let me turn off the camera.
Oh, Tim, I can talk for longer if you want. I can talk for longer.
I know you can. We're not going there.
I was cringing every time I heard him open his mouth because Paul had promised to take us to the bar if we got done by 6:30.
We're done.
How are you? Sorry we didn't connect.
But we didn't make it, Paul, so you're free.
Why are you looking at that?
Which one?
By 7?
It's now 7:01.
Was it by 7?
No, 6:30.